Hey everyone, welcome. Hey, this is a podcast that explores various aspects of addiction, potentially focusing on personal stories of recovery, scientific perspectives, societal impacts, or related topics. This podcast often features discussions with experts, individuals in recovery, therapists, and advocates to offer insights and support to those affected by addiction or seeking more information about it. Welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Addiction. I am your host, Al Richards. And today, with our guest, Nicole Mery, we're going to be talking about she had to do it her way. And I find this very, very interesting. So, Nicole, thank you so much for being on the show, for taking time out of your day. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. I'm absolutely loving your podcast and glad to be a part of it.
Well, thank you so much. So this kind of reminds me of a Nike commercial, just do it your way. You know, um, Apparently this is what's worked for you, because a lot of people do. I mean, I watched my ex-wife say that she could do it her way because she was tired of everybody telling her what to do. And she was really having a hard time with that. And it took many times of going through many different rehabs before she finally figured it out. She cannot do it alone. However, I have had guests in the past that have also spoke about doing it their way, and it worked, because we all have our own little separate journeys. Is that what you found for yourself?
Absolutely. So, Al, I struggled with alcohol for years. It started as small, it actually kind of triggered when my father passed away in 2003. And I hadn't drank, I did the dabbling and messing around in high school, partied in high school, and then I stopped and um, carried on, got married. And then when my father passed away in 2003, it really hit me. And the crazy thing is he actually passed away from alcoholism and drug abuse. And so you would think that that would deter me from drinking. And it actually kind of was the start of it. I drank a whole bottle of champagne when we were done with this celebration of life, and kind of trickled from there. But I didn't drink a lot. I was here and there socially drinking, but it just grew. It went from, I'm not going to have any alcohol in the house, to, oh, I'll have a little bit. We're hosting a party. I had a group of friends that, we started hanging out more. We started drinking more, started going out more. And then it was, just grew and grew and grew. And then I found myself drinking a lot, drinking alone, drinking for every occasion, whether it was celebratory or frustration or stress. And my son was in an accident in 2009 with me, involving a ride-on lawnmower. That's a whole different podcast. But it kind of triggered more things, where I had a lot of things and guilt that I was dealing with. And, things that happen when you drink create, guilt and shame and all these things. You feel bad for drinking. Well, I was also, part of my religion was we don't drink. So I hid it. I hid all of my drinking. My husband didn't know how much I was drinking. My family didn't know. My two young boys at the time really had no clue how much I was drinking. My daughters caught on. And as it grew and grew and grew, I kept thinking I need to stop. I wanted to be one of those, people that could control their alcohol, like have that glass of wine while you're making dinner. But because I was hiding it, I was literally a closet drinker. Like, I have a mini fridge in my closet, and I would go run upstairs and I'd take a shot, or I'd shoot a glass of wine or whatever. And, to get through my day or the party I was having. We always have family and friends over. And then as my kids got older, they were doing their own thing, and I found myself drinking a lot alone. I'd sit here and do laundry, or I would get my work done. I was helping my husband. I helped my husband run a business and some other things. I'm a fitness instructor, and I was high functioning. Nobody had a clue. I just, kept drinking. And then as it got worse and worse, I started getting, have you thought about going to AA? Have you, realizing that I did need help. Mind you, I did it my way, but you can't do it alone. Absolutely. Like, you need a support system, but you need a support system that understands you. And so as I started researching, mind you, all of this is hidden. I'm hiding from people. I'm sneaking water bottles full of vodka places. I, couldn't go to the movies. I couldn't go to the park. I couldn't go, there were a lot of things that I was drinking through and maintaining and keeping my high functioning. And I thought it made me more fun. And as it kind of got more and more out of control, I started reclusing. I started pushing back. Everybody thought I was busy because I'm a business owner and I've got a lot going on. And I kept thinking, I got to do this. I got to do this. And then I kept thinking, I can't go to an AA meeting. What if I run into somebody I know? Very embedded in the community. I'm very embedded in everything. And I was like, and then I was like, well, if I run into somebody I know, they're there for a reason too. So I guess that wouldn't be too bad. But with all the resources online, I started researching things. And for one of my birthdays, I was actually gifted the big book, the AA book. And, I looked into that, and my first therapist had given me a book, and it was the 12 steps for women. Because, as I read and learned a little bit more about AA, it is geared more around men in their recovery. And I started noticing that more and more women have this problem. And I was like, how am I going to get out of this? Go to rehab. And then you hear the stories of, and I created a lot of stories in my own head, of course, but you hear the stories of, oh, they went to rehab 3 and 4 times and it didn't work. And I thought, I don't have the money for that. I don't have the time to spend 30 days away from my family and my work and all the things that I was doing. Like I was busy and like I said, high functioning. And I found myself going, I got to find a way to do this because I'm not happy. I'm not where I want to be. And I had started with a therapist in person and I struggled. I would go to therapy. We tried EMDR. I have a lot of childhood trauma. I was abused as a child. There's a lot that resonates there. And I'd go to therapy and then I find myself going straight to the liquor store afterwards, coming home. And for 2 days, I'd just drink. And I'd get myself recovered. I'd be feeling better, be like, oh, okay, it's 5 o'clock. I'm going to start drinking again, or always chasing that next drink. And I kept thinking, Nicole, you got to figure this out. I'm a strong-willed person. I'm smart. I can get things figured out. And so I started looking online, looking for things, and lots of things popped up. And there was this thing called Sobriety Sisters that had popped up. I said, I was doing a 21-day program. And I had been doing that up and down, where you stop for a couple days and then you're like, okay, I'm doing good. I'm feeling better. I can control this. I can have a couple drinks. My family knew I was drinking more. So it would be, I told them, well, if I could drink in front of you, I'd feel less guilty. And so I thought that would help me not drink as much.
Yeah.
If I could have a glass of wine while we're sitting here hanging out, I wouldn't feel like I was hiding it from you. And fast forward, I was finally fed up. I was to the point where I was so unhealthy. Drinking really gave me body dysmorphia. I wasn't eating properly. I was just falling apart. And at the time I was like losing things. My family, my oldest daughter didn't want to talk to me. My husband traveled a lot, so he really didn't see a lot of it. My kids would call him and be like, oh, mom's in bed, passed out again, and I'm like, this is not who I want to be. And this is not who I am. Like, what is going on with you? Like having that self-talk of what the hell is wrong with you? And, and I was like, there's got to be a way to do this. So I started looking up like AA online and meetings that way. And I'd have friends and family say, well, why don't you just start going to a meeting? Do you want me to go to a meeting with you? And I was like, yeah. And then I'd recluse from it. No, I don't want to do that. And then why don't you get into a rehab center and do that? And I was like, there's no way I can disappear. And I was like, Nicole, there's got to be a way. And I really truly believe in like affirmations, what you feed yourself. And as we sit there and we scroll through Instagram, Facebook, and all of our ads, you see all these, alcohol ads of the backyard party, summer barbecue. We're going to have drinks there. We're going to have this, the fancy dress up. Alcohol is so glorified.
Yeah. That's
It's
what I was
just
getting ready to say.
glorified thing. And then if you
Yeah.
really look into the science of it, it's poison. It's literal poison. But the hard part is you're chasing, a lot of my heavier drinking is I was chasing that feeling. I was chasing that, oh, there's that chill, relax, that buzzed feeling. You chase that and you can't keep getting it if you just keep consuming more. It just makes it worse. It doesn't give you that good vibe. And so, getting it under control was a big part of it. But then I was like, I need to look into getting real with myself. So I had searched online. I found the Sobriety Sisters. They had like a little 21-day program where you connected with them. It was kind of an accountability thing, but I had the safety of my screens. I had the safety of not going to a meeting, not being in person. And I had the safety of not telling anybody. Nobody knew I was participating in this program. And I kept seeing these ads for therapy through BetterHelp. And I thought, I'm to the point where my husband is unhappy with me. He's tired of putting up with it. My kids no longer like wanted to talk to me or be around me, which kind of triggered me to drink more. I was like, they don't need me. My oldest can drive. They're doing their thing. They like, my worth had just dropped and my love for myself was depleted. I was like, this is not who I am. Like, I feel like I've been a good positive influence in my city and all of the things that I do and in the schools and all these things. And I just like, Nicole, this isn't you. If people really knew the truth, it would crush people. It would crush people and I'd be crushed. Like I worried about what would people think about me? What would people feel if they knew the honest truth of this battle that I have and all of the things that I had been through and, allowing that childhood trauma to be a big part of me. And I really learned a lot as I've gone through this process of sobriety and recovery and this journey. It's an amazing journey. But I plugged in to BetterHelp and I finally, one of the biggest keys was I got honest with myself. I got honest with myself and the therapist and I, wrote up, I was able to type everything out. And I finally was like, I'm drinking a lot. And you look at the bottles that I was throwing away, the bottles that I was hiding, and the bottles I was going and purchasing, and all these things. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going through so much. But I was in denial because I would just toss them and I'd be like, oh, I only have one bottle left. And when I got real with how much I was actually consuming, it was insane. I
Yeah.
was like, but I was afraid to admit it. Somebody said, how many drinks have you had? I'd be like, oh, I've had two. Or if they saw me have two drinks at the party, they don't know that before the party, I chugged a bunch of vodka before we left, or whatever the case may be. And so I ended up plugging into BetterHelp and I typed it all out. It's like, this is where I'm at, really. I'm dealing with a lot of things mentally. I'm dealing with a lot of bad self-worth. And as I'm typing it out, I'm realizing I've lost all the love for myself. And a lot of people would say, well, do it for your kids, get sober for your kids, get sober for your spouse, get sober for your life. And I was like, it's not that I don't love my family. I love them through and through. Like I'd do anything for them, but I couldn't find that. I don't know. I couldn't do it for them. I had to do it for myself. Like I had to have the desire to be sober. I had to have the desire to take alcohol out of my life. Well, at this point in
Yeah.
my life, alcohol was everything.
And
It
and
was.
and if I could pause you just for a second, Nicole, I think a lot of people like myself who've been on the other side, that's the part we don't understand, right? We don't understand the grasp that whatever that addiction is, whether it's alcohol or drugs or porn or gambling or eating, because it all corresponds the same way,
Right.
that it's not that the person that you love and care about doesn't want to do it. Because I used to throw that at my ex-wife all the time. I'm like, you love alcohol more than you love me. And she'd just break down, start bawling, saying, that is not true. And I'm like, well, sure it is, because I'm watching it. You want to consume the hell out of this. And then,
Absolutely.
I'm getting pushed off to the side. That's what we see.
Yeah.
And we don't understand that addiction is constantly jabbing you in the ribs, going, nope, nope. And then listening to what you've shared with that roller coaster as well, it's like, I know I need help, but then also I'm justifying it so I can keep drinking. And
Absolutely.
and so you're doing this stuff all the time,
Yeah.
and that's where the hiding comes in. Because I hid my weekend cocaine use from my wife the first 3 years we were dating. She
Yeah.
knew I was drinking, but she didn't know I was snorting cocaine as well. And she goes, "Is that why you were able to drink so much?" And I'm like, "Yeah, because if
Yep.
I started getting too drunk, I'd start snorting more cocaine. Then when I was getting too high, I'd start drinking more. So all night long, I'm doing this to balance everything out.
Absolutely.
So you just see me as me and don't realize there's other stuff going on." So yeah, and with you saying that, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because anyone that listens to this podcast and just heard what Nicole shared, see, I get emotional even talking about it because it affects us so much. You don't realize the battle that the other individual is going through. We're going through our own separate battle, and they're going through their battle as well. And we're blaming them and whatever substance it is that they're using, like we're not important enough. And our loved ones still love us. They
Absolutely.
love us, and they would still, like you said, you would do anything for your kids and your husband. However, that grass, man, it just has that way of pulling you right back.
The one thing that my therapist pointed out, she said, your alcohol is your boyfriend. And I said, my boyfriend. And she said, it's your dependable companion. And she was not wrong. I could always count on my, I like I said, my husband traveled a lot. So I couldn't count on him to be there when I was struggling, our conversations here and there, but it was alcohol. I could turn to alcohol for everything. I didn't know how to live life without alcohol. And that's what scared me the most was, how do I go to the concerts? How do I hang out with my friends? How do I do my daily life without that chipper feeling of, a tequila soda or whatever? And I was like, that's incredible. She is so true. It is so true that no matter what, you get to the point where no matter what, you'll figure out a way to get alcohol. I'm ashamed of some of the things I did to get my hands on some alcohol. And, and, but I was like, it was something I could depend on. It was my companion. It was really something that, whether if my husband's off doing in another state doing something, or my kids are off doing their own thing, I could come home and have a bottle of Jack and be happy. Like,
Yeah.
and it's crazy how dependent you get on that. And, and it eats at you. It's like, oh, well, I don't know what to do myself. I'd start drinking. And one thing that I realize is not everybody understands addiction. And you try to explain it. I try to explain to my husband all the time. I was like, I don't know how to explain addiction. And then as I learn and I've grown, it's a coping method. What are you using to cope? We all use something to cope with our stuff, whether it's being a workaholic or any of the other addictions or anything like that. And I was using alcohol to cope rather than facing my traumas. And what changed when I started that online therapy, one was I could do it this way. I could have a FaceTime conversation, or I could message, and I wasn't in person feeling all of the feelings. I could hide here in my bedroom and have that conversation where I felt safe. And she said to me, it was for the first time, she said to me, I don't want to talk about you being an alcoholic. She said, I want to talk about why. And that, as I've researched and I've worked on myself, and I see my friends and other people that are struggling with the same thing, I realize it's, why are you drinking? Why is alcohol the thing you turn to? And it's because it is dependable. I want to relax, I'm going to drink. I want to celebrate, I'm going to drink. I want to avoid the world, I'm going to drink. Like, we use whatever excuse.
Mm-hmm.
And as I started digging into why, well, I was abused as a child. I carry that. My parents were divorced when I was 2. I was always upset because I wish my parents would have stayed together, because the abuse in my life wouldn't have happened. Like, there's all these things that life happens for a reason. If you realize things happen for a reason, and you can either cry and whine about it, or you can grow from it. You can take that life experience and learn the lessons. And it took me till I was 41 years old, going through therapy, having conversations with family members, to really learn a lot of truths about my childhood. And I think to myself, a lot of people have it worse, but I carried a lot of that. There were times when I thought, why am I like this? Why am I like this? Why am I dependent on alcohol? Why am I seeking attention? Why am I seeking these things? I hated it because the only time I would get attention from people was when I was on the down and out. But when I was strong, everybody saw me as this strong person that gets shit done. Like, I was getting things done. People thought I had it all together, and I was falling apart. But I kept hiding that because I didn't want people to know I was falling apart. And so I literally started working on my sobriety. I tracked it on a sober app. I plugged in online. I got, there are so many Facebook groups nowadays, and women need women. I understand, we all need each other, especially we all understand addiction in certain levels, but women, there are so many women, especially in the state of Utah, that are hiding their drinking.
Oh, yeah.
And, COVID didn't help. Being a mother is hard. Being a spouse and trying to do your best, we're the worst at creating these stories of we're not good enough. I'm not doing everything I'm supposed to as a mother. I'm not doing everything I'm supposed to as a wife. I'm not good enough. And we create these horrible stories about ourselves when in reality, we're doing the best we can with what we have. And I say that because I look back at all the work that my mom did, and it's like, she raised us, she dealt with all the things she did. She worked her butt off, but she was doing the best she could with what she had. And coming forward now, I'm 43 years old and realizing we go through things, and I went through a lot in my childhood, and a lot of it I carried. I still carry to this day. And I can either allow it to bring me down, or I can allow it to make me a better person. And I wanted to be sober for so long. I don't want to depend on alcohol. And I wanted to be, like I said, a normal drinker. I wanted to be able to go out and have a couple drinks and then come home, and, I'd go out and have a couple drinks and then come home and keep drinking until I'd pass out. And then the next day would roll around and you start feeling sick.
Yeah.
And, you want to drink to chase that down,
Yeah.
because that's what
Hair of the dog.
puts out, yeah, the hair of the dog. You putting out the fire with fire. And so I found myself doing that all the time. And going back to my husband, he doesn't understand addiction, not alcohol addiction. So he didn't understand my desire, my need for it, and I was like, it's so hard to explain. But if you stand back and you look at your life, what are you coping with? What are you dealing? How do you deal with stress? Do you get angry? Do you get overwhelmed? Do you shut down? Do you go into hyper mode? There's everybody copes different ways. And I had to learn how to slow down and how to cope. And when I say I wanted to do it my way, is I needed to plug into what worked for me. I started listening to books. I'll tell you, listening to other people's stories that are similar, or women that were dealing with addiction. I found some great books that taught me about, hearing their stories. I went, okay, I'm not alone in this journey. I'm not alone in this battle. And, I plugged into books, I plugged into groups online. I changed what I was looking at. You scroll through your Instagram, and what are you feeding yourself? If you're only seeing, as a woman, if all I'm seeing is all these supermodels and bikinis, and I'm sitting here comparing myself, and that's all I'm seeing, I'm feeling that dread of, I'm not that. I'm a
Mhm.
fitness instructor, so I see a lot of fitness things, and I'm like, oh, I need to do more, and I'm beating myself for not doing more. It's the same thing with alcohol. You see these funny memes of, mommy drinks wine, or different things like that, and it's like, oh, these are funny, or these videos of, girls getting together and having girls' night and all these things. And while it's fun, and I did have some great times drinking with my friends or with whoever, it's one of those things where, how do you learn to live your life without all that? How do you learn to go on an all-inclusive vacation and not have all the free tequila you can have, And I had to relearn everything. I felt like I had to relearn to walk. I had to relearn how to go to the movies. I had to relearn how to go on an outing. My first trip, we travel a lot. My husband and I travel a lot, and I would always drink on the plane. And, when you get there, it's like, where's your first drink? And we were able to experience this amazing trip to Turkey last year. And I was like, this is incredible. And, and they had a Turkish drink, and all I could think of is, could I have one drink? Could I have one sip? And I was like, no, you've come this far. It's not worth it, because I don't want one drink. I want 10.
Yeah.
I want to drink to get drunk. And that was one thing, like in high school, when I did drink occasionally, I drank to get drunk. And then I found myself doing that as an adult. And, you have to learn to live your life and fit in with your groups. A lot of things would tell me, okay, go to AA, you need to go to rehab, you need to change your circle of friends, you need to get away from it, you need to not have alcohol in your house. Nobody else in my family drinks. It was just me. And I'm not normal. I wasn't going to give up all of my friends. I was honest with my friends. My friends were honest with me. They've helped me in this journey. If they choose to drink around me or whatever, they understand and respect that I don't. They've even slowed down or quit drinking themselves. Like, you never know the power of influence.
Oh, yeah.
And, I kept it a big secret. And I finally, on social media, I a year into it, I posted I am sober 365 days. So I posted and I started telling people, sorry,
No, don't be sorry. It's okay.
but I was like, I couldn't post before that. Like, you want to tell people you're excited. It's like when you're having a baby, you want to tell everybody, but you want to wait till you're out of that window of worry, right? I had to wait till I was far enough along in my sobriety that I felt confident in it. I didn't want to say, I'm getting sober, blah, blah, blah. And 2, 3 weeks into it, every little milestone, that 30 days was huge for me. The 60 days was huge, the 90 days. And all of the things that came up to me, all the triggers, I had to pay attention closely to all the things that made me want to drink. I'll tell you, alcohol's still on my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I go to the concerts and I go, oh man, we used to drink a ton before we came here. We'd run right straight to the bar at the concert or whatever. And so at 365 days, I started posting and I hashtagged owning my truth. And it was powerful. Not only like it was powerful for me to say, let me tell you something. I'm not perfect. You guys see this world of I'm married, I've got great kids, I've got great jobs. I own several businesses now, and I've owned them for a while, and then I started getting messages of, oh my gosh, I had no clue. I had no idea. I had no idea you were dealing with this struggle. I deal with it too. I deal with this and that. And so it was that humbling myself to go, you know what? This is a scary thing to tell people. By the way, I'm a raging alcoholic, but it's been freeing for me because I'm owning my truth. And that's one of the things. The hiding was huge. And I hid things because as a child, I was hiding secrets. I was forced to hide secrets. I was, being abused and told if you tell anybody, you're going to get hurt. So my whole life, I've kept these secrets.
Yeah.
And now it's like, no, I'm going to tell the truth. And owning my truth was huge. And so I've shared several different things on my personal social media platforms, and it's been really healing to have people respond and their reactions. And then now when I see people are so sweet and respectable. I go and I'm out in outings and they're like, I'm so proud of you. I've had people kind of secretly say with a drink in their hand, I'm so proud of you. I know how hard that's got to be. And so
S-
it's been a good journey.
You know,
But
and,
happy
and
way.
and Nicole, thank you so much for sharing that, because by using your voice and even respecting yourself of knowing where you're at in this journey, and then waiting the 365 days to start opening up. See, this is this is where my emotions kick in, because I've lived it and I've seen it as well. Look how many people lives that you've changed. Seriously, just by those couple posts.
Hope so.
Now you got them starting to think, right? Oh my gosh. And the same happened to me when I kept my wife's alcoholism a secret. I didn't tell friends, I didn't tell family, because again, the judgment, the fear,
Well, it's embarrassing.
everything, right? Yeah. And I finally opened up because a friend started realizing I wasn't being my normal self. And when I told him what was happening, he said, "Why are you not sharing this?" Because and I says, "Well, who the hell wants to listen to my sob story?" And he goes, "Al, there's so many people out there going through the same thing that you're going through." And you
Absolutely.
said it yourself just a little bit ago. We feel like we are the only freaking ones out of 7 billion, 8 billion people on this planet. We're the only ones that's suffering with this. But that's our brain. That's our brain. And we're
Yeah,
telling
it's a
ourselves,
story we tell ourselves that we're on this journey by ourselves and nobody else in this. I kept thinking, no other women are like this. No other women drink like this.
yeah.
I have a very close friend that I know has drank like I do. And seeing her, I'm going, wow, like more women need to hear that it's okay. It's
Mhm.
okay for us to move forward and that we're not alone.
Yeah. And we're not. We're definitely not. And the same thing happened to me that happened to you. When I started opening up, I started having people coming to me at network. I've been networking for 12, 13 years, and I've gotten to know a lot of people, and people started coming up going, "Hey, can I talk to you in private for a minute?" And we're talking men and women. And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." Would go off down the hall or in another room or something. They're like, hey, I don't know if you know, but I used to be a heroin addict. And I'm like, what? I've known you for 8 years. No freaking way. But
Yeah,
just by opening up, it's so crazy how it works, because we have just opened a door to allow someone else to come out of the closet, and per se in a
absolutely.
different way, right?
Yeah,
And it's so crazy. And what's really nuts about all this, Nicole, is hearing your story. When I started this podcast over 3 years ago, I started it because of my ex-wife's battle with alcoholism. All
yeah,
the mistakes I made as a husband, like yours, not understanding addiction, even
right.
though I battled an 8-year weekend cocaine and alcohol addiction, right? So it's so crazy because I did not open up about my stuff until last January, and my show had already been going on for over a year.
Yeah,
And it was a good friend of mine, Dave DeRocher, the executive director for TOSA, the Other Side Academy. I got to share a stage with him in 2022 down in St. George, and we got talking. We had a meeting, and he told me I would be more powerful as a speaker if I shared my own story and not my wife's. That was her story to share, right?
absolutely. I agree.
And what came out of this, that same day he told me that his assistant was a guest co-host on my show. That's when I had my studio,
Yeah,
and the guest didn't show up. And a lot of my listeners have heard this story, but I love sharing it. She goes, Al, what are we going to do? And I said, Robin, today you're the host. I'm going to be the guest. And she's like, no way, no, no, no way. And I says, please, it's supposed to happen this way.
absolutely.
And she interviewed me, and my wife came in the studio at the time, and she about hit her knees. She's like, oh my hell, he's actually sharing his story for the very first time. This is what's so cool that comes out of, see, I get emotional, what's come out of everything you have just shared so far. I get a phone call last year, and it's March or April, and it's my daughter. She says, Dad, what's up? And I says, hey, I'm just at work. She goes, do you have a minute? And I said, yeah, sure, absolutely. She goes, I need to talk to you about something. You're not going to like the first part. And I'm going, okay, what, what the heck's going on, right? And she goes, I've got to admit, there came a time where I did not want to support you and your show anymore. And I'm like, are you serious? Why? And she goes, because you've always played the victim on your show, because and Janan, who is my ex-wife, we're still good friends. I'm still supporting her in her journey. Matter of fact, she just hit 6 months sober again
Right
just a
on.
couple days ago. And she goes, Dad, you was the victim, but that's all you played. And she goes, I was cooking dinner the other day, and I come across your podcast, and I saw the title, and she goes, I clicked on it, and she goes, I listened to the whole thing. And she goes, and then I listened to it again. And she goes, Dad, whew, I want you to know how proud I am of you for coming out and sharing your story, because I know your past. And I said, yes. She's probably the only one my whole life that I've ever been completely honest with, because I used to be the biggest liar and manipulator there was
Yeah.
15 years ago.
It
15
comes
years
comes
ago,
with the territory.
it comes with it. Well, and it's the way I'm not blaming the way I was brought up. It's just that's what I felt like I had to do to survive,
Right.
to lie and
You
manipulate.
get conditioned that way somewhat.
Yep. And holy cow, it opened my eyes so much, and it changed my life so much. And it's brought so many amazing things into my life by getting that freaking monkey off my back. And I've talked to other people, especially those that I have interviewed as being a potential client. You know, once you cut that string that's holding that carrot above you, nobody can hold that carrot over your head ever again. Nobody.
Right.
Because there's things we do that we're not proud of.
Absolutely.
And it's not who we are. We're this person who we're just using something to cover up whatever we're feeling inside of us right here. We just don't want to feel it anymore. And that's one of the big things that I love about this show. And you're even sharing it today, using our voice and letting people know it's okay to feel the feelings that we're feeling. We don't need something, a substance, other than, for me, being spiritual, other than my higher power, who I call God, is for me, is my higher power. Having that, for me, that's all I need to help direct me in the direction that I need to go. And my life has changed so much. And hoping, by continue to do this show and having amazing guests on my show like yourself, who are not afraid to be vulnerable and open up, all it takes is one life to change, and that ripple
Right.
effect goes far beyond anything you and I could ever see.
Right. I feel strongly about that. I when I opened up, it was kind of for me, it was that weight off your shoulders. Whew, I let it out. And I could walk tall and be myself. This is who I am. This is how I show up. And while I was drinking and struggling, I kept thinking, you're better than this. This doesn't need to be you. You're such a stronger person. God has a bigger plan for you. And, and it's funny because I've heard different stories, and I've done a lot of things in my life. And one of the stories that I remember hearing was the story of the two people walking along the beach, and there's a bunch of starfish on the beach, and the man picks up one and throws one in, and there's hundreds of thousands, and the guy says, there's no way you can make a difference. And he picks up another starfish and he throws it in, and he said, I made a difference to that one. And that's how I feel,
Yeah,
because we're all influencers in a way or whatever. Now we've got all these TikToks and all these things where people are sharing, so you see something, oh, where'd you get your glasses, where'd you get your hat, we're all influencers in a way. And it's like, okay, what influence do we want to follow? And when you hear stories of hearing your story, I immediately, when I met you, I was like, I want to talk to him, because you're on the side that my husband is, that not really victim, but it's just like, you're like, how do I understand this? How do I understand this addiction? How do I understand the supporting of somebody struggling with this? You understood more. And I thought, I immediately, when I saw you, I was like, I need to know you. Um, because you would help me understand him and my kids' side of things from a different perspective. Mind you, honesty is huge. I've been very honest with my husband, very honest with my kids. We are very open. We talk about it. I used to think, oh, my husband's out there, my kids are telling their friends that I'm an alcoholic and all this stuff. And my kid said to me, Mom, it's embarrassing. It's the last thing I want to tell people, is that you struggle with alcohol. And, you know, we've celebrated my 2 years of sobriety in
congrats.
May, on Cinco de Mayo, actually. And my kids were making a big deal out of it, almost more than my birthday. And I was like, okay, okay. And I was excited about it. And then I was like angry. And I was, why am I angry? I said, I'm feeling a lot of emotions. And I was angry. And I thought, I talked to a really close friend of mine that she's my nutritionist, and she's also sober as well. So she's helped me kind of through this journey. And I said to her, I'm angry. Why do I feel this way? At 2 years, I should be excited and happy. I should be elated. And I said, but I'm angry. Why is this my story? I was like, I should have known better, having, parents that drink, having an alcoholic father, all these things. But I finally understand him. I remember standing in my dining room and screaming, why did you make me like this? And as I run my businesses and I do the things that I do, I finally understood him, that alcohol had taken over, and you kind of give up hope. I felt, I felt, I kept saying, I want to eat, pray, love my way out of here. And I've never thankfully ever been um, wanting to unalive myself, but I wanted to run away. I thought my family was better off without this mother that's drinking all the time and angry and unhappy, and I'm not giving to them like I should, and all these things. And as I get older and I'm getting honest, I think, and that's one of the thing is even if you don't want to be sober out loud, Okay. A lot of people don't want to be sober out loud. I choose to be because it may make a difference to just one person. And that one person, and being sober out loud is just giving everyone else permission that it can be done.
Mhm.
That your story doesn't, everybody's story is different. Everybody's journey is different. Everybody experiences it differently. You know, some people don't hit rock bottom. They don't end up homeless before they get sober. They find the problem faster, or you know, whatever the story is. But honestly, honesty has been one of the biggest ones. And then getting sober out loud and talking out loud. It's just the messages, like you said, the messages you receive, and even, but it's my kids when, you know, I celebrate my 2 years sober and I'm having this conversation. I was talking to my oldest about it and I said, I'm just angry. I'm angry that this is my story. And she said, Mom, there's a reason. She's like, look at where we are now. Look at what we've learned. Look at how we've grown, you know. And I was like, you're right. And even just me personally and my little family, like I'm grateful for the changes that we've made and the journey now that we've been through. There's so much, and we're all stronger for it. We've had a lot of things go on, and it's, you know, we're all stronger for it. So sometimes it's just taking that little first step of following sober accounts, listening to your podcast. I plugged into podcasts, listening to what are you influencing yourself with? If all you're seeing is drinking, 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 you know, it's the power of influence, what you're looking at and seeing. And that's why when I say, you know, we go back to doing it my way, I had to do it my way and find a path that would work. Not everybody's path is the same, as you know, everybody's journey is different, but the typical go to rehab or go to AA and all those things, yes, they do work for some people. But if that's not your path, find something. Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid. There's so many sober groups on Facebook. I follow a lot of things on Instagram, and I love it because now I'm getting fed. It's, you know, Sunday mornings are beautiful because I'm not waking up hungover and disgusted and sick or feeling regret and remorse from what happened the day before or whatever. And so, you know, I really appreciate your side of things. And I appreciate you also being honest with your story, because in some influences that was, you know, weekend partying is normal. And I appreciate you for sharing that story originally with me. And I think it's amazing that your daughter brought that out, like that, for her to hear it. And it changes things when, if the only thing I influence is my own children to be better people, to be more honest, to talk about things that may drive them into a horrible coping mechanism of alcoholism or whatever it is, then I've done a good job.
Yeah. And you said it, you know, our journeys are our own, and your daughter was 100% correct. You know, Steve Jobs said that if you connect the dots backwards of your life, you'll see you're exactly where you're supposed to be right this very minute. And that is so true. That is 100% spot on. And a guest of mine on a show a couple years ago said that. And I actually was analyzing that on the way home after the show, and I really started thinking about where my life has been for the past almost 15 years now. And everything that I've gone through up to this point of coming out of my weekend addiction, my ex-wife falling into her alcoholism, me losing my job of 24 years, us losing our house, all up to this point has led me to having this podcast now, becoming a certified crisis and recovery coach, and so many, and the circle of people that I have in my realm. I've had good friends in the past, but nothing compared to what I have now. Some of the most amazing individuals you could ever meet, who are so influential, who just have a love about life. And I tell you what, the majority of those are people who are in long-term recovery
Yeah.
because they lived in the darkest parts, and they know how to appreciate life. They know how to appreciate everything they have when so many of us out there are putting on this facade that everything is hunky dory.
Right.
I'm actually doing a talk in Park City for the Park City Wellness Alliance on the
Oh,
20th
great.
next week, and
Okay.
I'm talking about that a little bit about holding our feelings in, and I think that's one of the reasons why suicide rate has gone up for men
Absolutely.
from the age of 18 up to 55, because I was brought up in the round, you don't show your emotions.
Yeah.
You buck up and you just keep
Brush it
plowing
off.
through, brush it off, and especially for like our first responders who see things that the normal individual people who are out there in society don't see. I mean, these people go to accidents where people and children have lost their lives, and they see
Absolutely.
so many things that just pound on your emotions. And you know, I know someone who retired from the Sandy City Police who ended up losing his life because of a bad liver, because that's all he did was drink on his days off
Yep.
just to cope with things, just to
Absolutely.
try to, make life a little better. And man, we gotta be allowed to share our emotions and not be ashamed at all.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of influence in life, and we look back. I'm all about connecting the dots. My just a quick story. My youngest just graduated from high school, and he's the one that when he was 3, he was in an accident with a ride-on lawnmower that I was driving, which has, we fast forward, 15 years, and we're talking about his graduation, we were talking about his life and different things like that. And, we've worked through it, we've talked through it because, I felt guilty even though it was an accident. He ended up behind me. I didn't see him, and ended up resulting in him losing his left leg. So he has a prosthetic leg. Well, now he's a powerful, influential dancer. He competes in dance. He's incredible. He's my 6 foot tall, beautiful son that just, when we talk about his life, and he's like, Mom, if I had both my legs, I don't know what path I would have taken. And, now as he's graduated and we've got him in a program that's working on like the business of dance. And then he plans to go into school to be a sports medicine trainer and all this stuff, and going to the University of Utah. So
Oh, Utes.
yeah, go Utes. So, we were talking about, he goes, I don't know where we would be had that accident not happened. And I believe things happen for a reason. And I believe that it brings you to that, like you said, you go put the dots together backwards and you go, okay, we're here now. And we actually were just talking about that the other day. And I look at my whole entire family as a whole, and what just that one accident, what that has done for our lives. He struggles. He's like, yeah, of course I went through times when I wish I had both my legs and all this stuff. And he's like, but I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't be. He's a powerful young man, and he's a strong dancer, and he's influential in his own right. I say, you realize people are watching you, and they've been watching you since I posted your first video of you dancing on stage, and he wants to be seen as a dancer, and he is seen as a dancer, not just a kid that can dance with a prosthetic leg. And, but when you talk about that whole putting the dots together and going backwards, it just reminded me what we were talking about the other day, as far as we're here in this season of life. From all of the things, everything has brought us to this point, brought the right people into our life, the right things into our life, taken the wrong things out, or maybe you're still dealing with some of the wrong things or wrong people. And me being here with you, I believe in divine intervention. That day when I saw you and you introduced yourself, I was like, I need to know him. Only for my personal, I need to know you because you have something that can help me grow as a person. And in that same meeting, another one of the gals that was there had talked about how she had been helping with addiction recovery. Well, one of the things that I want to bring into my salon business is we do sound baths and meditations. And one of the ones I'd really like to do is sober meditations. And not just if you're sober, come on in. It's if you want to get control back from alcohol, if you want to not feel dependent on it, and you want to just not even that, just really getting a grasp on your own. I needed to get a grasp on my own love for myself. I needed to come back to going, what do I want? And when I first, like, going back to the doing my way and all those things, I got selfish. I was selfish to be selfless. And that sounds kind of strange, but I reclused. I had to work on myself. I didn't go through the, hey, kids, will you forgive me? I'm so sorry I did this. My sorries were empty sorries. They didn't, I get, I'm sorry I drank so much last weekend. Here I am drinking again. They just became an empty thing.
Mhm.
And I didn't, I talked to them a little bit, but I worked on myself. And I really think that as we each individually, every person should work on themselves, because as you work on yourself individually, it's how you can show up better out there. That's why, like, your circle of influence that you're talking about, I really believe that people are brought into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And some we learn our lessons from, and some we're like, wow, I didn't know I needed you in my life so much. And some people are lifers. And so I just really appreciate meeting you. I appreciate what, it's like I was talking to Janine yesterday just of how I've been brought together with all of these things. Like I said, I believe in divine intervention, and it's brought me here with you today. And I really do appreciate you letting me share my story, because even if I can't, change the world, we all want to change the world in some way. We want to stop all the violence, stop all the wars, stop all the horrible, traumatic things that are happening out there. If we can make a difference to just one person, to let them know they're not alone, and that it's okay to be themselves, and to take their life, take the bull by the horns and take control of your life. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what your spouse does or your kids do or whatever, you got to lay down with your choices.
Yeah.
When you go to your judgment day, you got to face up to what you did, to who you were. Your salvation depends on you, not on your influence, your family. It's what you do. And that was a huge part for me, is when I meet my maker, I've got to own up to how I showed up every day, and not showed up in the world, not showed up for other people, how I showed up for me. How am I showing up for me? How am I treating myself? There's a lot of focus on self-care now, but are you taking a minute? I'm fast paced, go, 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 go all the time. And it took me a lot. Sometimes some of my drinking was just to slow me down. And it took me a lot to learn to just slow down and be okay with my thoughts, because that was what I was hiding from. That accident, I drank a lot after that, and it was because I was hiding. I was tired of hearing the sounds. I was tired of seeing the visuals. I was tired of that trauma, and I just kept covering it up, covering it up, covering it up with alcohol. Like, it'll go away. It'll go away. And it doesn't. It just festers under there, and it's just growing like big weed. And when you open up, you get honest with yourself, you start talking about things, getting out there. It's made a huge difference for me, in my family, in my life. And like I said, it's not just how I show up in public, it's how I show up for myself. And I really hope that people out there can just say, you know what, today I'm just going to try, whether it's working on sobriety or any other facet of your life. I'm going to work on my own mind space, you know?
Yeah. Well, and you said it earlier in the show about being selfish. Now, there's a couple ways of being selfish, right? Because you have to be selfish of your own being and taking care of you. Because it's like when I fasted and I was asking God, how can I get through this? And the word forgiveness kept coming up. And I kept saying, look, if you think I'm going to forgive her for everything I've gone through with her, no way, that is not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And it took some time, and it finally dawned on me, the forgiveness wasn't for her. The forgiveness was for me. I had
Yep.
to forgive myself for all the things that I did wrong and the nasty things I said to her.
Right.
And once I was able to do that, I was able to forgive all the other stuff. To me, that's the type of selfishness that we all have to have, because if we can't love ourselves
Absolutely.
100% or even 95% or whatever, we cannot give that love to anyone else. You said something about wanting to change the world, and I really don't think, in a way, it's not impossible, because if we just changed one life, it goes back to that starfish. We just made a
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
And then that starfish may make a difference for another one, right? And it just dominoes. It continues to go. And as long as there's people like yourself, Nicole, and so many others out there that are spreading the love and the care and using their selfishness in the right way, not the wrong way of, oh, are you cold? Do you want my coat? Well, too bad. I'm cold too. I'm keeping my coat,
Yeah.
right?
No.
That's a different type of selfishness compared to, you need some love, you need some care. I'm here. Just even listen. That's, if
Right.
that's all you're looking for, I'm just here to listen. And we can
Right.
change this world. And I really do believe there's a shift that's starting to happen.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just seeing it out there, and that's just my version of it. But I think there's a shift starting to happen where people are starting to realize we've been doing things so wrong
Yeah.
so long. And there's people that are going, the lights are going off and going,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. And again, it wouldn't be possible at all if you and I hadn't gone through our own journey the way that we've gone through, and thousands of other people's. None of that would be making this today out in the world possible if it wasn't
Right.
for our journeys.
Right. Well, and you nailed it when you talk about, we talk about that selfishness. You can't pour from an empty cup. I
Mm-mm.
was pouring, pouring, pouring from an empty cup. And I was like, how do I expect that when you talk about forgiveness? It's interesting because, you know, forgiveness is a huge part of recovery and all those things. And I was like, I needed to forgive myself before I could ever allow anybody else to forgive me
Yeah.
or to even ask for it. And I was like, I got to get right with myself. I need to work on my love for myself, my appreciation, my respect, my honesty, my all of the things with myself before I could go out and give any of that or ask for any of that in return. So you definitely nailed that on the head. And it's just interesting because like I said, I got selfish to be selfless. And it's really that huge part of, I want to give all that I can give, but you get to the point where you can't give anymore. And I was to the point where I felt like I was giving to everybody. And that was my, I'm doing good because I'm out here volunteering and I'm doing all these things for everybody. And then, my stubborn side and my Leo side was like, well, why isn't anybody appreciating me for it? And I was like, you don't need appreciation, just keep going. So but the alcohol and that demon was saying these things and convincing me of all these things. And it's trying to justify that I was a good person because I'm over here doing good deeds, but I'm also over here hiding all this alcohol and anger and shame and all these things. So, it's been a journey, and I really respect and appreciate everyone that shares their journey because everybody sees in life, we all see things from different perspectives. And I'm trying to teach my kids that. I was like, when you hear a story, you hear something from somebody or somebody's judgment on you, ultimately, people are going to judge you. I learned this back in the day, beginning of social media, all these things, like people judge you, whether
Mhm.
you care or not. They're going to judge you. Everybody has an opinion about something. And I got to the point where I was like, we go through that, like, if you're religious, you try to live by that religious standard, or if you're this or this or this, you could try to, I'm this, I need to be this way. And we hold ourselves to this ridiculous standard in all the things that we do. And I'd heard something about somebody, oh, you're this, and this, or I heard somebody saying something, whatever the gossip is. And I thought, you know what? If people are going to judge me, let them. I'm not going to, that's when I really went, I'm going to do me and live my life and focus on what works for me. Because at the end of the day, if I get judged for buying a new truck, guess what? They're not making the payment. I get to do what I want to do. And this is my life. And like I said, at the end of the day, I get to deal with my choices. I get to lay down with my choices, and I get to work on my own salvation. And so I think if everybody would because I think one of the biggest things um, in sobriety is we're so worried about what other people think.
Yeah.
And even like, you see I've been seeing these posts of, it's so funny that when you go out and you say, I don't drink, people are like, oh, why?
Yeah.
And you get that response. And I think, why can't we normalize sobriety? If I went to a party and said, oh, I don't do meth, they'd be like, oh, okay, that's good. You know, but if you say, well, I don't drink, well, why don't you drink? Or are you better than us? Or you get that kind of like a repercussion from it. It's like, no, I choose not to. Like, if you compare ingredients to ingredients, I've been in the fitness world forever, and you look at the foods we're doing and all these, the keto diets and the protein diets and all these things, you see all this stuff. What are we putting into our body? But then on the weekend, we're down in a bottle of tequila. Like, are we really paying attention to what we're putting into our body? And, and so we need to not, I guess I'm getting to the judgment part where it's like, people are going to judge you no matter what. And as soon as you accept that, then like, for me, I'm free to live my life.
Yeah.
I get to live my life my way because I'm the one that gets to deal with all the consequences of all the choices that I make. And so does everybody else. So, and I feel like it's getting better. I want to say that it's getting better and that sobriety is becoming more of a new, or drinking less, but it's learning how to do things. Like a lot of us, I didn't know how to go to a concert sober. I go to concerts all summer long. I'm going to one tonight. And I'm like, the first one I went to, I was terrified.
I
I
bet.
was like, how am I going to do this sober? How am I going to have a good time and not sit back there with my arms crossed and look like I'm judging everybody? I'm just trying to make it through, and now I can have a good time, let my hair down and not have to be that mom and that businesswoman and all these things. I run the businesses, but I want to have fun too. And yeah, so I'm just trying to be more selfless as I navigate through life. And, if between what you're doing and what we're all doing, if we can normalize sobriety, I think it would be amazing. But it's not just about the alcohol. It's about the why.
Yeah.
Why are you drinking? Why are you coping this way? Why are you choosing this? Like, I was listening to your YouTube just recently about the black and white card. Why do you choose this one and
Yep.
not this one? It's all about choices. And I hope that as the world is turning and feels sometimes like it's getting better and it's getting worse and it's getting better, it's all about perspective and how we see it and how we want to show up for ourselves in the world.
Yeah. Goes back to that story, of the two wolves. Which wolf do you want to feed? You want to feed the black wolf or the white wolf?
Mm,
And you've said it quite a few times during the show. It's all about the choice. What choice is it that we want to do? And also talking about other people who are saying stuff about us or judging us. I have worked really, really hard on going, you know, if that's how they look at me, okay, I wonder what they're suffering from within,
that's
because
exactly
that's
how I
what's
feel.
causing it. It's
Yeah,
right. It's not me,
absolutely.
because I can be around somebody that's doing something that just irritates the crap out of me. Are they doing anything wrong? No, I'm the one that's
I'm
getting
just irritable.
irritated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're just doing them. They're not, who says they're doing something wrong? Because to
Yeah.
them it's normal. It's natural.
That
So
that's
yeah.
that's funny because I kind of bug my kids this way because I tend to put myself in other people's shoes. I'm very empathetic, but and I've been through a lot in my life. So I've experienced a lot, but I'll never know what you've experienced. You'll never know exactly what I've experienced, but I put myself in your shoes. If we're talking about something, I feel what you're telling me. I feel, your perspective as much as I possibly can. Okay. Because obviously we won't be able to see the full perspective. And, we'll talk about things and about, oh, so and so said this and felt this. And they'll get kind of annoyed because I'll be like, well, what are they going through? What are they dealing with? Like, they came at you or they said this or they're hurting your feelings or these different things are going on or they're acting such a way, I immediately think, what are they dealing with or what are they going through? Because as I've gone through all these things, I now look back at how I was in high school or how I was in junior high or as an adult, as a mom. And I realized a lot of the things that I did were because of what I was conditioned or what I believed to be true or what I was told as a child or whatever. It all carries on as we get older. And I was like, why am I acting this way? Well, you realize that some of your childhood things and influences are what can either kind of create that monster or create that good thing that you carry on those things. So, I always tell my kids, what are they going through? Or like, look at it from their perspective, put yourself in their shoes. Like, And for me, that humbles me because, maybe they're an angry person. I look back at my dad and I wish I would have been able to say, let's talk about what you're going through. Let's talk about what you're dealing with. Instead, I found out at the age of 42 a lot more, found out a lot more about the truth that, I was told you'll find out when you're older from everybody when I was younger. And now that I'm older and I've found out a lot of things, I have a lot more respect and understanding for my parents. And I have a lot of compassion for those things. But it took, years of trying to understand. We'll never ever understand each other fully. And that's where, you go into that judgment. Like if somebody's judging me, I'm like, what are you going through? Like to make you feel such a way towards me or such a way towards these people you're talking about, or you're expressing, it's like you said, if somebody's irritating you, if somebody's irritating me, I'm the one allowing them to irritate me. So it kind of, for me, it just makes me take a step back and go, everybody's got a story.
Yeah.
And when I see people acting such a way, I look at them and it's different. I don't look at them. I guess for me, I don't look at them and go, oh, wow, she's a Karen or she's a this. And I look at it from, I wonder what they're going through. Because here's the thing, women are funny. We're funny in a weird way. I was terrified of women growing up in a sense of I was intimidated by them, very, very much intimidated by them. I grew up with two brothers. I was a tomboy. I wasn't the girly girl. When I had girlfriends, they were catty and nasty and, growing up all these things. And as I got older and I was working in a very, as a sales director with Mary Kay, and I was working in a very female, obviously dominated company. And as I worked my way up in as a sales director, I started hanging out with the top 2%, like the directors, and going to the meetings that help lead other people and all these things. I absolutely love it. I contribute a lot of my success to what I learned in Mary Kay. But I was so intimidated by women. I was like, oh, they're all put together. They look great. I'm this tomboy girl from the West Side. I'm not, I didn't think I was much. I didn't have a lot of money. And all these things. And I don't think it matters how much money you have or what you have. If at the end of the day, or at the beginning of the day, we all put our pants on one leg at a time. And we all have shit. Ultimately, everybody has stuff. And if you, and they say about, if we all threw our stuff in the middle of the pile, and you could take whatever stuff you wanted, you would probably take your own back, right? You like hear that story, that analogy. And it's so true. And so my perspective changed when I see people acting away or doing things, and I look at women and I think, do you know how much power you have and how amazing you are as a mother? As we beat ourselves up because we're not doing enough, and we're beating ourselves up because we should be a better wife, or we should be doing this, or we put so much pressure on ourselves. And I think, what if for just a day you gave yourself credit for all the good things you're doing? Because there's always time to fix things, but if you have a roof over your head, your kids have clothes on their back, they have food in their mouth, you're already kind of ahead of the game.
Yeah.
But if your kid comes up and gives you a hug and says, I love you, or your child calls you and says, Dad, I'm proud of you, then you've done a good job. Like, we don't give ourselves enough credit as parents and as humans, and we beat ourselves up, but we're doing the best with what we have.
Yeah.
We're doing them, it's like they always talk about the oldest growing up with the parents. And I've told my oldest, I said, I've told her, thank you multiple times. Thank you. So I was learning, the way my youngest is versus my oldest is different. And, and I hope that if anything, as doing this podcast or talking about the things that men and women alike are not afraid to turn inward. It's not selfish. When you focus on what you can do and grow as yourself, and it's how you can give back around you. Whether if your only circle of influence is your dog, like
Yeah.
you can't, for me, I can't give from an empty cup. So sometimes I need to check out and I need to take that long meditating bath, or I need to go for a walk, or I need to do the things that bring me joy. What brings me joy? It's okay to do those things because we all have the same 24 hours in a day. It's what we do with them.
Yep. Exactly.
And I'm just glad
Well,
to stop breaking them away.
yeah. Nicole, it's been an absolute pleasure. And again, I believe in like what you do. People come into your life for a reason, and I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to meet at that event that day. And I almost talked myself out of going. My friend Jessica actually invited me to it, and she couldn't make it, but she goes, "Hey, there's this event going on," and of course, my brain was saying, "Oh, you don't need to go. You don't need to go." And I've learned throughout all the years that if my head tells me don't go, unless I have a weird feeling about it, that's a reason for me to go. Because if I don't go, it's keeping me away from something or someone that I absolutely need to meet. And I met some amazing people like yourself there at that event that night. And I know when I was up talking, I do my best to scan the room, and I was watching you over there shaking your head, and I'm like, okay, well, she's resonating with something, which is really good. And again, I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to meet. And you're a lovely woman doing amazing things. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. I'm
This is
trying.
where my emotions kick in, because it's individuals like yourself that is changing the world. And I mean on a good positive note. And those are the type of people I love to circle myself with, because it just makes our energy stronger, the way I
Absolutely.
see it. So with one last thing, what does the other side of addiction mean to you?
It's funny. You mentioned the word the other side of addiction, and I thought, what does that mean? Is that like me that's on the other side of addiction, as far as I'm a recovering alcoholic, or however you want to word it? How, and then listening to you and you talking about yourself with your spouse, and it gives perspective and a whole different view. So, addiction doesn't need to define us, and it doesn't define us. It's part of the journey. You know, alcohol does not define me. My addiction does not define me.
Yes.
And so for me, let's talk about everything on the other side of addiction. What am I? Who am I? Where am I? And I think that if we stop labeling everybody, it is sure we have an addiction, but stop labeling us. You're an addict. You're an alcoholic. You're an addict. Now you hear those and they feel like negative words. The biggest thing my therapist did for me is she saw me. And that's where I really feel like a lot of people that go down this spiral of hell sometimes, we all just want to be seen. And we're all out there fighting kind of to be seen. And I think for me, like, I know that I feel sometimes I'm out of the thick of it, but then I think, oh, could I go on this trip and have a drink? Or if I did drink again, what would happen? And it's never not on your mind. It's always going to be something that's there. It's, you drive down the street, no, there's a liquor store right there. Your habits are always going to be there if you're in your familiars. But for me, the other side of addiction for me is I'm on the other side of addiction for me. I don't want that to define me, but also really understanding and communicating with my kids. How did that make you feel? Them telling stories of things that happened, and understanding their perspective as well, because alcohol doesn't just affect the person consuming it. It affects everything. It affects your dogs. My dogs used to chase me around. My little husky would come and follow me into the closet, and she'd look right in my eyes and I'd be like, stop judging me, because she knew. So I really, really appreciate you having this podcast and you just being the man that you are and for showing up that day. And I hope you know that you're making a massive difference, not just here locally, like nationwide, worldwide. So I appreciate you being bold enough to put this out there, because talking about the other side of addiction, talking about these things are not always easy. And I think as we more and more normalize it, the more and more it's going to be a greater thing that we don't need to see. Alcohol's been a thing since before Jesus, I swear. Like,
Yeah.
it's wine has been a thing, alcohol has been a thing. And, I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts, and I think the common denominator on a lot of these murderers and a lot of things and all these things is alcohol plays a huge part. You look at domestic violence, you look at road rage, you look at different things. A lot of the bad in the world, alcohol plays a huge part.
Yeah.
And if we could see it for what it is, then we can get on the other side of it, and or be okay with owning up to your own shit. Realistically, I've been talking with my husband about men, and when you run a successful business and you do all these things in life, and if things don't go your way, or things change. My father passed away at 49. He should not have been gone at 49. He had
Oh,
so much life to live. And I look at it in that age group. I want I want it to be normal for men and women alike to be able to share really themselves, be your true selves, be true to yourselves. And for so many years and so many generations, it is that buck up, shake it off, stop crying. We don't show our emotions. Showing emotion isn't just crying. Like, be excited about life. What brings you joy and happiness and love? If we're going to spend 40 hours a week doing something, we should be doing it, work, doing something we enjoy, right?
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I look at it that way, and it's like, I do check-ins sometimes with my husband, and I say, how are you doing? He, not to get much into it, but he's traveled our whole marriage, anywhere from 6 to 8, 9, 10 months out of the year. We remodel Walmarts across the country and tear out the floor and replace them. And I would travel with him for a little bit when the kids were little. And then for years he would travel on his own. And I'll admittingly, I was lonely. I was home, just a mom is what I felt. I didn't have really anything outside of that. We were so focused on work, and my husband was doing everything he could because he was providing. That's what he felt was his job, and a lot of times we go into those roles. My job is to provide the money for the home. And nowadays it takes two and a half incomes to actually run a household.
Yeah.
But everybody kind of has their roles, but he was working his butt off trying to provide. I'm working my butt off trying to take care of the kids and all those things, but we lost ourselves in the mix of it. And it's like, what are we providing emotionally and acceptably, like, for each other? Like, what are we doing for our kids, and all those things? And now fast forward, he doesn't want to travel anymore. And I joke with him, I'm like, oh, sure, now that the kids don't need their diapers changed and driven around,
Sure. Now that they're
but I
adults.
but we're in a different place. But I appreciate it because he has worked so hard in it, and he missed out on a lot of that, but he also didn't see a lot of the addiction. And so that's part of why he didn't understand it. And I hid it from him. It was easy to hide it from him. He wasn't around. I didn't have to talk to him every day, all day, and all these things. We had opposite schedules, and he kind of knew but didn't know the thick of it. And then explaining it to somebody that doesn't come from a family of addiction is a little bit harder. And I have a lot of respect for him because he's very black and white. He's very, you know, you tell him that, how it is, kind of. He's not a super emotional guy, which has helped put me in like a good perspective of everything doesn't have to be cried over, but let's talk about it. Like, it's okay to say, how does this make me feel? Rather than just taking that emotion out on another person. Something makes you angry. You don't need to take it out on them. Just say, this is pissing me off. And there were times, you know, we go through our lives feeling so many emotions because we're not willing to actually own the emotion that it is. And so, anyways, I didn't mean to go off on that tangent, but it's really just being through all this has given me a lot of perspective. And I'll never understand what my kids felt or what they went through. I'll never, and each one of my kids are different. My daughters would hide me per se, or hide what I was going through from my younger sons. And, but it took a team. I may have done a lot of it. I may have done a lot of it on my own, as far as I needed to do the research. I needed to do the work. I needed to do it my way, but I absolutely could not have done it without their support,
Yeah.
without them, without them, to be honest, it drove me a little bit more that my oldest didn't want to talk to me. She was frustrated with me. She didn't want to deal with me. My youngest, or my second oldest, was going to school, and she was so glad to get the hell out of here. And I don't blame her. I'm not angry. And I'll never necessarily understand it from their perspective at all. I will try my hardest to have some understanding or I have my own perspective, they have theirs, but like I have empathy for it. And the more they're open with me about it, the more I can try to understand more about it or about how they felt. And they'll never understand how I fully felt.
Yeah.
They'll never understand that some of my triggers were not being good enough for them. Some of those triggers they stem from striving so hard to be a good mom and a good wife and a good human and feeling like I was enough. And that's where I want to take all the men and women in the world that are like feeling like they're not enough. You are. Who do you need to be enough for?
Yeah.
Society? How's that working for some other people out there?
Yeah. How does
You
that
know what I
work
mean?
for you?
Like,
Yeah.
how are you when you, for me, it's like, at the end of the day, am I proud of what I did today? Did I do what I could? What can I do better tomorrow? Because we're all kind of little in this big world. So,
Yeah. We're just a speck.
yeah,
Yeah. Everything you said was very well put, Nicole. I mean, very, very well put.
thank you.
For our listeners, if they're going through anything, you guys have heard the phrase, if you hold up a cup and you see the water and is this cup half full or is it half empty? And it's how you look at it, right? Is where you're at. I saw a video that years ago that really opened up my perspective on it. Don't look at it as half full or half empty. Dump it all out and say it's refillable, because you can
Right.
literally fill that cup back up to whatever you want to put in that cup. You can
Right.
put BS, bullshit, anger, addiction, whatever it is. Or again, you can put positive, love,
Yep.
empathy. You can put in that cup whatever the hell you want to put in that cup. You have the choice of doing it. It just depends on which direction you want to go and which wolf you want to feed. So, Nicole, again, thank you, my dear, so much
Thank
for
you.
taking time out of your busy day to be with us. I really, really do appreciate it.
I appreciate the time with you. You're a great
Thank
man.
you. Thank you.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.
All right. So, guys, again, thank you to all our guests, all our past guests, man, all our past sponsors. Thank you, guys. And especially to all you listeners. None of this would be possible if it wasn't for you. You guys are the ones that's making this a success. And before I sign off, guys, remember to mark your calendars for October 5th at the Miller Free Enterprise Building. We've got our 4th Healing Utah Success Summit that is coming up. We're still looking for some sponsors and for vendors, and we are going to fill the house this year for sure. We've got 4 amazing speakers. We got 5 speakers total. I'm going to put the other 4 in the amazing. I won't put myself in that category, even though I do put on a really good talk. So, guys, again, thank you for everything. And remember this: addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.